Welcome to the Savage Rifter Show, Episode 2. I am one of your hosts, Gary, a.k.a. the Murder Hobo, and I'm here with none other than world-renowned and infamous Rift superstar Victor Diaz of the Savage Rift's G+ community fame.
Hey, Gary, how's it going? Good to see everybody, or maybe hear everybody again. As usual, you guys know how this goes. This is the podcast for the fans and by the fans. Thank you so much, everybody, for having me on. Gary, for putting me on. And let's see what kind of trouble we can cause this week.
We're going to break down Savage Rifts piece by piece so Victor can teach me and you, the listener, how to play, enjoy, and understand Rifts. What are we doing today, Victor?
So this week, we're going to go over Chapter 1 of the Tommorow Legion Players Guide. We left off last week finishing up all of the introduction and going over a lot of the history and what it is, Savage Worlds, and what it means to make Savage World characters. But now we're going to actually go into the deep of it, starting off with some of the iconic frameworks and work our way through that as long as time allows.
Yeah, we were talking about this off air, and hopefully we can get through, because I'd like to do sort of a detailed look at what the different characters are, how they work, and all that kind of stuff. So you were kind of mentioning that we might get through something called the Lords of War.
Yeah, I think in the Lords of War, how we're going to do this episode, only because all of the details that go into what it is to make a Savage World character is the easy part. It's how they mash that all up with the Rift system and how they put it together in these packages, or what they call iconic frameworks. The iconic frameworks in the book are put together in 3 different areas. The first one that we're going to be covering is, like you said, Lords of War, and it covers the Combat Cyborg, the Crazy, the Cyber Knight, and one of yours and mine favorites, the Glitter Boy, along with the Juicer. And if time allows, and we may have to put this one into a whole nother episode, we're going to talk about the Mars iconic frameworks, the mercenaries, adventurers, rogues, and scholars of the Rifts. So we'll see how much we can cram into an hour.
Sweet. I'm pretty excited. I actually have some good stories that I'll tell you along the way that pertain to my first 2 excursions into the world of Rifts. So,
awesome. Looking forward to it.
Over the next couple of episodes, I guess we're going to be breaking down the character creation section. We'll be talking about that with Victor. And let's get into it. We'll head over to news from the community. This week in the Rifts community. First off, we've got the G+ Savage Rifts secret documents. You just released an article pertaining to rules for enemy tactics. It's kind of something that you've got on the go inside of the G+ community. Player characters, or not player characters, NPCs, how to use them and stuff like that. Get some details on this. What is this Samus thing that I keep seeing you post about?
Yeah, so the Samus power armor, SAMAS, it's actually a winged suit of power armor that can travel about 90 miles an hour with a big turbine engine on it. Really cool, really awesome. But what I've been hearing from a lot of the community is that they don't know how to use these NPCs or these monsters, these coalition soldiers, in any particular tactical way, like soldiers would attack each other. When I started looking at it, I started to go back to look at some notes that I had, and I have this huge OneNote notebook that I've had for 10 years on just gaming stuff. It's like a half a gigabyte big now. But I started taking a look at some of the notes and combat notes that I would make whenever we're using the Samus pilot, or I was using the Samus pilot as a GM. And one of the first notes that struck me was an A-10 Warthog. An A-10 Warthog is a big gunship used by the United States Marine Corps, I believe. And they've got a lot of tactics on how they do ground assaults from a fast-moving air assault vehicle, air-to-ground attacks. So I took a lot of their tactics, and I took a lot of other information that I had learned from other games and other systems on tactics for using power armor, how to use their strength, how to protect from their weaknesses, and just some of the things the United States military does. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can learn off of YouTube and off the internet. So I applied a little bit. I mixed it all together in the blender, and I came up with how to use a Samus power armor in a 2-man tandem team in order to be able to have some really good small man or small group tactics. One of the people that had asked me for that was one of the Google Plus community members. I'm trying to look that up right now. Let's see.
Yeah,
I
nobody
believe
cares.
it was.
Nobody cares about him, Victor.
Oh yeah, I care about him because you know what? That's what it's all about. I mean, that's what the community's about. But anyways, R.S. Tilton had asked me, I need a Coalition Samus 2-man patrol. So I put that up on the Google page. And if you guys want to check it out, just go into the Google page under Savage Rifts. Ask to be a member. I'm the moderator, so I'll go in and let you in, and you can take a look at the couple of thousand posts that we've had in the last 12 months. But that's pretty much what a Samus power armor is. Now, going back to the Savage Rifts secret documents, enemy tactics, what that was a conversation that we started on the Savage Rifts Google Plus page, and it turned into its own separate article. So I'm asking everyone in the community to go in there, give me the page number, the name of the Rifts book, and then the title of the actual monster, creature, soldier, OCC, RCC, NPC, whatever you want to call it. Put it in there, and I'll post a little 1 or 2 round combat tactics manual on what the system rules are that go along with that, and just a quick summary to show you how you can use. The Splugor Slaver was one of the initial ones. They wanted to know some combat tactics for using a Splugor Slaver, so I threw that in there for 1 or 2 rounds of how to set it up as a GM to pretty much generic tactics that they would use everywhere that you'd go. This way, the community can kind of get those questions answered, because that's what they're really struggling with. I think a lot of people are really like the IP. They really like what Savage Rifts is, but it just makes it really, really difficult to be able to manage all of those tactics, especially when you throw in dragons, power armor, robots, railguns, glitter boys, juicers, leyline walkers, all that stuff. So
I really like the idea of these enemy tactics. I can pop in there, I can check out something, see if there's maybe the appropriate monster. How am I going to fight with this demon that's popping out of? We did Garnertown Gambit. Something like that would have been super handy for him to see how the demon just kicked my arse. By the way, I think when it was all said and done, I lost a limb, and now I have a cybernetic arm that has a spatula for
a leyline wizard. Yay!
Yeah, and it's got a spatula for a hand instead of a robotic arm. Well, the murder hobo party that I was playing with, when the guy showed up in town with his cybernetic sales wagon, so to speak, he wouldn't sell us any parts, or we didn't have enough money. And they're like, "Well, let's deal. We have this robot armor that we found in the water that we kicked. We kicked its butt and we chopped it up and stuff like that." And he's like, "But it's broken, so we don't want to take. It's not worth anything." And we're like, "Come on, you got to be able to get something out of it, right?" He's like, "No, I'm leaving." So the crazy pulled out the sniper rifle and shot the guy and splattered his brains all over the. And so anyways, as DM's fiat or whatever you want to call it, he was like, "Okay, you can have the cybernetic arm, but it has a spatula for a hand." Anyways, moving on. Sean Masters has just released episode 5 of the Voice of Hope podcast. Be sure to check that out. We'll put the link in the show notes so that you guys can find it a little bit easier. But Victor, Sean Masters, he's been a part of the community for some time. What is this Voice of Hope podcast all about?
You know what? He's been doing a great job. I'd like to give him big props and a big shout out. When he first told me that he was going to do the podcast, he was asking, "Hey, do you want to do this together? You want to help me out? Can I?" And I volunteered, and I told him, "Let's get together." And couldn't get our schedules together. And everyone's busy with life that kind of takes us away from our gaming, everyone's first love. But he's been doing a great job. He does an in-character world-building podcast that's mostly intended for the players. But it gives a lot of the GMs, too, a lot of the world background. So he's more concerned about the adventure hooks, the NPCs, background into the areas of the different places that it takes place, the castle, in and around the Coalition states, just all the different places that's going on in and around Rifts Earth. Just a really great job, a really creative way to be able to put a podcast together. I couldn't ask for anything better. And in all honesty, I listen to it all the time, and I'm always taking stuff away from it. So it's really cool. If you haven't checked it out, please check it out. You can find it at voiceofhopepodcast.podbean.com. It is the Savage Rifts Voice of Hope podcast.
He really has the voice for that. Like it's just when you're when we had him on the Wild Eye, it's one of the things that I mentioned to him is like you really feel like you're sitting in a Humvee or some kind of ATV or something like that on the mountainside with your radio tuned in just to hear what this guy has to say about what's locally happening in the area and stuff. And it's really something else. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this section with something from the Google Plus community. It was the rule of the week last week. And it kind of caught my eye in the notes that we have, the show notes, because railguns and rate of fire. This came up apparently the rate of railguns always fire like at their maximum rate of fire or something along those lines.
So yeah, railguns. When you take a look at the page 91 of the Tommorow Legion Players Guide, there is a section that says railguns. And one of the things that it talks about is that you always fire a railgun in full auto. That means that the shots are coming in huge, massive bursts. So you can imagine a large 50 caliber machine gun, firing off in bursts of 8 or 10 rounds with a slight pause before it goes right into another one. Well, when a railgun fires, it's firing all of those bullets all in, one big, long, continuous shot. So you're firing all of those bursts, quote unquote, all in one go. So instead of, one of the big questions was, how do I track ammo for the railgun? And there's a little bit of a text issue in the wording of how it's used, but pretty much if it says you have an ammo of 10, if you shoot once, you just remove 1 ammo. There's no removing 3 shots from your ammo because everything is counted in bursts. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive, but we got into a long discussion about it over on the Google Plus page. So if you really want to read through the 50 or so entries that we put in on it, please be my guest if you want a little bit more details. But shots are not okay. So the rulebook says shots are not multiplied by the rate of fire. So in most games of Savage Worlds, if you have a machine gun that has a rate of fire of 3, you would roll your dice 3 times, 1 for every shot of rate of fire. A railgun does not work that way. If it says you have 3d10 with a rate of fire of 3 and it's a railgun, you're only going to roll those 3d10. You're not going to multiply those 3 or make that roll 3 times 9 dice total. You're just going to roll once for all of those bursts for all of that attack. It just completely puts up such a wall of lead and just, nightmarish bullets in the air, that you're just going to take all of that damage all at once. That's what makes the railgun really destructive. It just shreds and tears everything apart. That, and it has a really high armor piercing value too. So that doesn't hurt or help any, depending on whether you're the target or the firer.
All right. Well, that's going to tie up news from the Rifts for this week. And we're going to hop over now to the Legionnaire Fields Report, see what we got for some mail this week.
Incoming reports mail. The Legionaries Field Reports.
This is where we give some questions from the community, and we try to take some questions, and we try to give you a solid answer. You can reach us at the murderhoboshow@gmail.com. You just put in the subject line Rifts, or get us on Twitter if you can keep it under 140 characters, at Murder Hobo Show. Or, of course, over at the Google Plus page, Murder Hobo Show under the Nerds International banner. Or you can reach out to myself, Victor the Savage Rifter, directly at the Google Plus Savage Rifts page, where the community is always active and willing to answer your questions.
Yes, super active community. It's probably your best bet. If you wanted to get an answer immediately, that would be the place to go. So we had a few people write in, make some comments and stuff like that. I made a couple of notes. I took them down. And Eric Buchanan, he liked the show. He wanted to know if this is going to be an ongoing Savage Rift show or was this just a one-shot. He says, I listen to the show at work, and all I want to do is get home and write material. Well, I'm glad that we had that effect on Eric, and this is actually going to be an ongoing segment. There's so much material in the Rifts world that I don't even know. Like, me and Victor will probably be old codgety men by the time we finish. As many times as me and Victor can hook up and get together with our busy schedules, that sounds like we're going on hot dates all the time, but we've got a lot of material. We're going to get through this, the Tommorow Legion's Player Guide, section by section, page by page.
Either way, I was looking at a question. One of the Legionnaires, he wrote up, Patrick Greenlaw said, think Victor may want to GM a live play one-shot or a short campaign, say maybe 2 to 5 sessions worth.
That's
I'd be interested in that. End quote. Yeah, Patrick, I would love to be able to play in a one-shot or even a short campaign, 2 to 5 sessions worth. What I was actually thinking, and I responded back to Patrick Greenlaw a little bit about this, and I told him I'd love to do that as soon as I can get my schedule, I can get through some of the podcasts and get some of the other things that I have going on my plate. I would really be interested in that.
So, Victor, do you play online at all? Do you use Fantasy Grounds, Roll20? Have you got like an online preference that you like to?
I like to use Tabletop Simulator. A lot of people aren't using it. They
All
like to use
right.
Roll20. They like to use all the others. But Tabletop Simulator seems to be the happy medium for me because there's no rules. I don't have to worry about anything. Everybody can throw their own dice, bring their own miniatures. I can set it up, load it up, and play on it. And my guys can be in 5 different states, like we are. There's a couple thousand miles between me and you, and we're able to get on Tabletop Simulator and share that game that way. I think for me, that's the happiest medium or the best of all worlds.
Yeah, no, it is a fantastic program. I love it. I use it myself. I played Gartar, not my first online experience, but I've set up Gartar inside it. There's a really cool application for it called One World. If you're not familiar with it, I'll show it to you at some point, but it is so cool to be able just to click on the map and have like a complete other. It solved that app alone solves so many problems. Anyways, Peter Marino.
That's a whole nother episode.
Absolutely. No, that's super cool, man. If you could set up something inside of Tabletop Simulator, maybe some fans want to sign up and it's very time consuming, I know. So we'll talk about this. We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll have something thrown together for our followers, our listeners, or whatever it is. But yeah, that's actually pretty cool. Maybe I'll even do something, except my games are a little I don't even know the word. They're a little dirty. There might be robots that have, nuclear missile wieners and stuff like that. So
we'll have to set up a rated X game after midnight on somewhere.
Right. Peter Marino, he wrote in, he's like, by the way, I forgot to add, great job on the first podcast, but
Thank you, Peter.
It does drive me a little Riff's OCD when you call leyline walkers leyline wizards. And this is what Victor had to say. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, leyline wizard, let me tell you. Or any other leyline wizard or anything. And put me in my place. And he's like, all right, now what do you do? You're down to 1 PPE. Leyline wizard? Leyline walker, excuse me. Leyline walker, excuse me.
So yeah. Take that.
That is awesome, dude. That is awesome. You don't get enough credit, Gary. We're going to have to increase that paycheck a little bit more.
That's right.
Cool. No, Peter Marino, you know what? I understand how you feel about me calling leyline walkers leyline wizards. It kind of slips out of the tongue because I see LLW and I stop, we finish about 75% of that with our eyes and the rest our mind takes over. But I see that W and I just want to put wizard in there. I don't know why. I've always done that. I like to say leyline wizard. I think it's cooler. And if it drives your OCD crazy, I hate to tell you this, but I love doing that to people who have OCD. So enjoy that leyline wizard.
That's right. Peter Marino, suck it. All right.
You know what? I was also looking at one of them. I believe Sean Masters was talking about this. Quote, hey guys, great first show. Thank you, Sean. Will you be giving some examples of how you would translate OCCs into Mars personal concepts, or how will you transfer characters from, say, Deadlands? Yeah, Sean, I want to answer that question as concisely and correctly as I can because it's a complicated subject right now on the Google Plus community and on the top of my head and with all the other writers that I'm talking to. Yes, we plan on giving some examples on how to do Mars personal concepts and how to transfer characters, but you're going to have to wait for another show because that's going to take up a whole nother episode all by itself. And I guarantee you it'll be worth the wait, Sean. It'll be worth the wait. We'll see if we can get together and maybe, Sean, if you have some other questions, post them on the Google page, hit me up on Hangouts or send me an email. You can reach me at EzraHarden@outlook.com and we'll see what we can do. Maybe we can make you a part of the show. I'd love to have you.
I don't know what it is about OCC, but it just makes me want to sing songs.
Get out with LPP, yeah, you know me. Get out with LPP, yeah, you know me.
OCC means occupational character classes. That's what the iconic frameworks were called in the original riffs. They're called OCCs and RCCs. OCCs are the occupations or the classes. RCCs are the racial classes, and they were all thrown together and mixed in a blender. And it's kind of like what the Mars concept does. It puts all the mercenaries and all the different types of characters that you can play that you can create as a personal concept and kind of separates them all out in different character classes. So that's what that means. So
all right.
You learn something new every day, don't you?
Absolutely. And I'm probably going to forget it in 10 minutes because I'm just that way. I got to sit down and play it. I need to feel it in my hands.
Yeah,
all right.
Totally know what you mean.
That's going to be it for the Legionnaires Field Report. Let's get over to the Nexus Point.
Nexus Points.
Today's Nexus Point is going to be the Tommorow Legion's Player's Guide, Chapter 1 Characters. Now, I know everybody has been chomping at the bit, emailing me, calling me, bad names probably, asking me, hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to go over? I want to see this. I want to see that. If everyone will be patient with me, I will try to go over everything that we can regarding the iconic frameworks. But we're going to start right at the top. We're going to go right into the Lords of War. Now, the Lords of War section covers the Combat Cyborg, the Crazy, the Cyber Knight, the Glitter Boy, the Juicer, and the Mars, which stands for Mercenaries, Adventurers, Rogues, and Scholars of Rifts. And, well, let's jump right in and let's start talking about a Combat Cyborg. So Combat Cyborgs are really awesome. They're the big powerhouse fighter, the tank, as you will. A lot of online players like to call them that. These are the guys that can take a licking and keep on ticking, and, they can bring it to. One of the things that I really admire about them is the bionic augmentation. You can really do a lot of fun stuff with the different cybernetics that they're allowed to take. So not just replacing an arm, replacing a leg, or having a full cyborg body, but you can have hidden compartments. You can have, like pistols in your thighs, and, laser rods coming out of your forearms, or claws that pop out of your hands. You just have to go and pick all those different packages and all the stuff that you can do. Everything from increased armor plating to core electronics packages, optics, a reinforced skeletal frame, the whole nine. There's some really good stuff in there that you can do and really enhance your combat ability, because that's what he is. They don't call him a combat cyborg for nothing. He is literally a beat-down monster. He'll go in there and with his bare hands really cause some damage. So when we start looking at the very beginning of it, he starts talking about the combat cyborg has a human-like frame that happens to be 8 feet tall and a couple of 100 pounds of just good old-fashioned robot, 90% robot and maybe 10% human. Well, a lot of people don't realize about the Combat Cyborg is the Combat Cyborg is mostly machine from the neck down, and some of its skull has been removed, but a lot of the brain and most of the time the face has been kept human, or mostly human tissue, and it's covered with like some kind of scary face mask or a faceplate. Some of them will even wear a big old combat helmet over them to be able to protect that part of their brain, because the brain is the one thing that they can't replace the human being with. You can go 95% cyborg, but you still have to have a brain inside that big old bucket of a head that you have.
So this guy's kind of like RoboCop in a sense.
If you put RoboCop and Terminator together and put them both on a mechanical steroid machine, yeah, that's kind of what they'd be like.
That's this guy.
Exactly.
The Lords of War. He's part of this Lords of War. Now, the Lords of War are they like the melee combatants, the heavy frontline melee guys? Is that what he classifies as?
You hit it right on the head. That's exactly what it's about. The Lords of War, these are the guys who run the battlefield. These are the, not necessarily the grunts. These are your special forces, your big tanks, your heavy hitters, the speedsters, the snipers, the big guns, all the power armor folks, the Cyber Knight with their psionic swords. I mean, these are the guys that pretty much you're going to want one or two of these type of characters in your party. Now, I've run games where it's all magic users. It's all people who are arcane, techno wizard, leyline walker, mystic, that kind of stuff. And they do just fine. And I've had games where I have 3 glitter boys who are deciding to start their own squadron, which is crazy in and of itself. And then I've had all juicer groups. And then I've had a lot of different blends of groups that I've played over the years. And I'm almost always have had a combat cyborg in one way, shape, or form, either a Mars character that got totally destroyed and comes back as a combat cyborg, or somebody who started as a combat cyborg and he's playing the RoboCop thing, trying to remember who he was before he got reprogrammed. And, all those stories come in. So don't think just because you play a combat cyborg that you can't add story to it. That's one of the things that I try to get all of my players into is what's your backstory? Where did you come from? If you don't know, let's make that a part of what we're playing on, and I'll pick up on those cues as we go and drop hints for me. So just because you're playing a big old thug doesn't mean that you can't have a little heart to it. But getting back to the Combat Cyborg, there's lots of fun stuff that he can do. I mean, bionic augmentation, you're going to start out with a strength of D12 plus 2. I mean, seriously?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Even the Glitter Boy, I think, has a strength of D12 plus 4. I could be wrong on that, and check me on that if I am. But, I mean, come on. You can literally arm wrestle the Glitter Boy power armor just by yourself. It's absolutely just incredible the strength that he can do. You've got high stats. You're going to have most of your attributes are going to be at their maximum or close to their maximum. And then we go into cybernetic enhancements. Like I said before, you can have strength augmentation. You can have, a reinforced frame, synthetic organs, wired reflexes, optics, radar, you name it. You can probably have it plugged in. Now, you do have a limitation to how much cybernetics you can have on your body.
Why is that? Is that strain?
Yeah, that's where strain comes in. So either the human body or a cyborg body has 6 points of strain that you can put on. So whenever, say, your arm gets cut off and you replace the arm, that could cost you 1 or 2 points of strain. Every time you take on strain, some things become more difficult. So you lose your sense of dexterity, you lose your sense of touch, you lose what it is to be human. And as a combat cyborg, you are allowed to pick more cybernetics that you get when you first create your character. But once you pile on all those extra cybernetics, it's still a load for your frame, for the computer inside that's helping your mind manage and maintain all of those systems. It's still a load, and it reduces the amount of flexibility. It's great to be tough, to have reinforced armor and then reinforced skeletons and synthetic organs, but you start to realize that you're losing more of your own human self. So sometimes the machine takes over, like in the RoboCop movie, where he was doing everything on automatic, and he was just writing a machine. He wasn't thinking about what he was doing. So you kind of have to give up a little bit of humanity to be able to take on those enhancements.
So, but these enhancements that these combat cyborgs pick up, I'm looking at what it says here, and it says that they're already factored into the starting stats. Is there separate lists that you can take? Like, say you don't want to have, like bionic strength, and you want to go with like super speed or something like that. Is there a way that you can pick what can you customize them by changing the enhancements from different lists that aren't shown on these pages?
Sure. So one of the things that you can do is you can take you got to sit down with your GM and you've got to go over what you can and cannot do. A lot of the cybernetics are listed in a separate section, and you can go and look and see what the costs of those cybernetics are. If you want to remove, say, like you said, super strength, and you want to take on, wired reflexes, all you would have to do is tell your GM, hey, I'm going to get rid of this edge or this cybernetic ability. It's worth 2 strain, and I want to take 2 strain of wired reflexes. It's a 1-for-1 exchange, but you have to have that conversation with your GM, because you may want to go over and look over the rules and make sure, you're trying to stay as balanced as possible. And I know people are going to be like, yeah, right, Victor, it's Savage Rifts. There's no such thing as balance. But technically there is. There was a lot of work in the background that was done to make sure that a lot of the characters had a unique feel and still kept them within the bounds of the game. So yes, Savage Rifts is, Savage Worlds turned to 11 on the amplifier dial, but you can still understand and hear the music that's coming out of the amplifier, and that's what's important. You want to make sure that you and your GM sit down and talk about it. But sure, you can go in and do that. You just go and start doing the theoretical math, like we call it, and do what nerds do and make it work however you want to.
So one of the issues that came up in character creation, and this is leads right into this, one of the bonuses that they get is these high performance legs. Which gives them, these legs basically give them the fleet-footed edge. And one of our players didn't realize that she would start with the quick edge, because I don't know, like, you got to be careful. Like, when you read these things, high-performance legs, they give you the fleet-footed edge. The juicer had an ability that was labeled something, and the edge she got was quick. So anytime you're dealt less than a 5, you get a new card, and it can change your initiative. That is one of the coolest parts about that edge, that quick edge is just awesome for that, right? And I noticed that I had a few of them in the Leyline Wizard, the Leyline Walker. I did that on purpose.
You're welcome, Patrick. You're welcome.
But you really have to look at stuff like that and read the entire class and see, or read the Combat Cyborg if that's what you're making, and look and see if you're getting all these extra edges. There seems to be a lot of that. Every class has gives you a few extra edges right out of the gate, which I think is super
that's
cool.
What I was talking about, how the writers, when they first created the character classes, one of the things that they were discussing was, yes, your characters start out at level 10. They don't start at level 1. You start out with a lot of abilities. You start out with a lot of growth, a lot of experience, a lot of survival experience that has happened to you because of the great apocalypse and what the Rift's Earth is and the things that you'd have to, be able to deal with. And that's one of the hardest parts that I think a lot of people have trouble getting into. That's why we both chuckle when we laugh at your GM, because this is the first game he's ever picking up to run. Everything else from this point on is going to be a piece of cake, because there's a lot of math involved. There's a lot of stuff that you need to be able to put together. How do the edges interact with each other? How do you what situations can you let them interact with each other? You were talking about having the fleet-footed edge because they have those powerful legs. You get an increase in your running die, and you get a bonus to your pace. So if, your character may start out at human speed, and then now you're a cyborg. So guess what? You get to run faster and run farther than most normal humans do. And that's where you get that bonus from. And then if you look at the quick edge, now not only do you move faster and farther than everyone else when you walk or run, but now you get the quick edge allows you to go earlier in the turn, because you get to throw away the low initiative card and ask for another one that has to be a 6 or higher. So I mean, it's all just bonuses, and that's just 2 edges. Most of the characters in Rifts start out with 4 or 5 edges sometimes, because the amount of experience points or the amount of abilities that they can use at start.
It puts such a smile on my face just thinking about the things that you could do with this guy. Like, you just get to just fly in there with your super strength and your kick-ass weapon and just smash some face, which is, it's just awesome. One thing you just mentioned,
what it's like, right? I mean, it's like the Terminator. You're not only tough and you can take a beating and you can keep moving even when half of your body's destroyed, but you're also going to be faster. You're going to be able to run faster. You're going to be able to run farther and move farther in the turn. And sometimes it comes down to those little system mechanics, and it'll make a big difference. I know there's a lot of characters, and there's one of my favorites, which is the next one on the list, is a crazy. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here. But one of the guys that plays in my game, he plays a crazy, and he has like quick, fleet of foot, split the minutes. I mean, he has like 5 things that make him go so fast, so quick. He's like a blur. I'm about to change his name to the Flash, but what really gives me a kick about the character is he plays the crazy to a T. He wears one of those little white bunny suits that you would put on like a little 2-year-old, with the zipper flap in the back, and he puts shoes on. He wears that underneath all of his stuff, so when he takes his helmet off, you see the 2 white ears like flipping around like that. I mean, it's just absolutely hysterical. I told him one day I'm going to get him just a hat like that so he can wear when he's playing the game. Just a white little fuzzy hat with the ears on it, because it's absolutely hysterical. But he's like super fast, and like I think that's where the rabbit comes in. But I haven't gone there yet. I'm kind of afraid to ask.
So you just mentioned something about starting at level 10. Is that a behind-the-scenes bit of information that you got, or is that a game rule mechanic?
No. So, when you talk about levels, I would say if I had to compare that statement to anything, I would compare that to D&D levels, because everyone can relate to Dungeons & Dragons because it's a game that almost everybody has played in one way, shape, or form. So, there's a progression, right? You start at for level 1, and you have just a little bit of equipment and just a little inkling of power. But by the time you get to level 10, you are a force to be reckoned with. You're a hero. You're a name that people know. You have significant amount of resources and power and magic and just ability that is well known throughout the realm, so to speak. So when you start out in Rifts, a lot of people don't realize that you're starting out with a character of a power level of 10. You might be a beginning character, but you didn't start out as a cyborg. You weren't born a cyborg. There's a lot of different options that you can take with that. And I think people take that for granted, and you really shouldn't, because there's a lot of good role-playing opportunities that you can have whenever you play like a crazy. You weren't crazy when you were born. You weren't crazy when you were a kid. How did all that happen? Why did you choose to be a crazy? How did you become a cyber knight? I mean, these are character classes that are starting you out, 50% of the way there in terms of power level. You've just got to figure out how to put the points together, make those points of light matter and make them shine for your character to be able to perform the way it's expected. It's difficult. It's not an easy thing to do, and there's not a lot of games that start you out that way. Yeah. Most of the games that we're used to playing, you start out, as a little late teen, early 20 character, and you eventually make your way to your mid 40s where you're, mid-level to 75% of the way where you need to be, maybe sometimes over a shorter amount of time.
You're overweight, balding.
Exactly. Well, and you don't start out that way, right? How we got the way we are now. There's 20 years of history of where I had to learn to game and learn to do what I do and learn to write and learn to project my voice and learn to talk and learn to roll dice and do all that other stuff. It's the same thing with this characters. Only people, when I explain to people when they're making characters, pretend this is a middle-aged character. It can be any age that you want in terms of how old the character is, but in terms of the skill set and ability that they have, they're considered, halfway through their lives. They've learned a significant amount of things in order to have that level of power, that level of responsibility. And some of them go crazy and they just do whatever they want to go do. And yeah, they could be wild killing machines, or other ones could be maybe kind of hiding it for whatever reason. But a lot of making the characters and writing that stuff up, and I'm sure everybody's the same way because we love to play these games. That's what intrigues me. And I'm sure it's the same with everyone else.
Yeah, I just thought when you said level 10, what I was actually thinking was that Rifts was designed so that the Combat Cyborg would start basically with 2 advances, and I thought maybe that was Rifts' little behind the scenes kind of thing that nobody really knew. Maybe you got some inside scoop or something, and they're like, yeah.
I wish I had enough of an inside track in the beginning in order to be able to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I knew Sean Patrick Fannin and I knew all the writers long before this ever got started, but I am in it to ride just like you guys. I don't really know too much more about what's been going on or how it was written, but a lot of that comes from the experience of having these conversations online with a lot of different people, meeting new folks like you and discussing the game a little bit more in depth and letting them know, hey, you're not playing a first level character. You're getting, like you said, you're going to be a level 10 character with 3 or 4 edges or 3 or 4 advancements right up front. Yes, You're still a level 1 character or a level 3 or 4 or 5 character, but you're going to be playing at a much higher power level. If Cthulhu comes out of the rifts, expect to jump up and shoot a railgun at his face. That's the kind of game that this is. Most people would think, oh, Cthulhu not going there, going to run, going to hide. I'm just going to die in obliteration and fear. In Rifts, it's not like that. You're going to stand there face to face at the top of the mountain and literally shoot its eye out. That's what you're going to try to do. And people don't realize that power level. That's the kind of game that a lot of people who play Rifts are playing it.
So this cyborg has, it gets an MDC armor bonus. Unlike my Leyline Wizard, I have to cast a high performance. I have to cast the Rifts version of armor upon myself in order to have the mega damage.
Greater armor. Right. Greater armor. So yeah, MDC armor for the cyborg is a given. Why wouldn't it be, right? I mean, you're a combat cyborg. You're supposed to be able to stand there and take a railgun to the chest. That doesn't mean that you're going to survive. That just means you have a better chance than most to survive. But MDC armor is pretty standard. So is the next couple of bullet points in the list. We're talking around chapter 13, if you guys are keeping up. We're talking about more machine. They add a bonus to recover from shaken. They can ignore a level of wound modifiers. So that right there should tell you how tough this character is.
That's cool.
So normally in Savage Worlds, whenever you take a wound, you only get 3. On the 4th one, you're incapacitated. So when you first take your first level of wound, there's a penalty for you to roll against the dice whenever you're rolling. Well, because you're more machine than human, you ignore all your first level wound penalties. And you know what? Even I forget that as the GM when I'm running the games with my cyborgs in them. I forget that they have that, and they still end up taking modifiers. But really, they're so tough. A -1 doesn't really make a big difference unless there's really a life on the line or it's a really close call. And he goes on to talk about. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like any machine, of course, he's got immunities. It does mention, I was just thinking to myself, like, how would you take this guy out? And I'm imagining I would have to find a junkyard somewhere, or actually just like Terminator, squish him. Or if I could find a magnet, I wonder if he'd be magnetic and I could just pick him up and he would be stuck there in the magnet, and that's how I would get away.
Yeah, see, and that's one of the questions that the GMs have really come up with, that I'm constantly being emailed and asked about, like, how do I stop this Splugorth? How do I stop a cyborg? For me, there's a couple of things that you need to do to be able to control a cyborg. One, there's a good old-fashioned just wear him down. You have to use big, hard-hitting tactics that are just going to put him in his place. You're going to put wounds on him from the very beginning, because if you don't do that, he's going to come back, rip your arm off, and beat you with it. That's pretty much what he does. Another thing to be able to stop a cyborg, EMP grenades, electromagnetic pulse. He's a robot. If you can get him in a blast, there's a good chance you can either create enough fatigue points to slow him down or start shutting systems off. So he picks up his railgun and the arm just drops to the ground. I mean, those kind of penalties. EMP pulses are great. They're just like in today's world, EMP grenades and EMP weapons are very rare in Rifts. Not a lot of those survived. There are some other aliens and other species that are coming through the Rifts that are bringing that level of technology, but a lot of people haven't discovered them yet. The Coalition forces have them, but very few carrying them around as standard weaponry. Special forces or some of the power armor pilots, or maybe some of the bigger planes and transports might have them, but you won't see them using them day to day, every day against cyborgs. They have railguns and big cannons and stuff for that. Only when they really start to have a problem, or you get a really smart special forces guy to walk up and drop a grenade and just smile as he walks away and it goes off, and he's sitting there with no power on. That's another way to do it. And then last but not least, this is Rifts. If the one thing that you should know and you should take away from this show, magic trumps technology and technology trumps magic. It works both ways. Combat Cyborg can do nothing against magic. So you do everything in your power to use every magic spell that you can against them, whether it's reducing their movement, whether it's inhibiting their vision, whether it's disabling their limbs or their weapons, whether it's creating changes in the environment for you to be able to control the environment. Or sometimes it's just a good old-fashioned blast them up, fireball, lightning bolt to the head kind of thing. I mean, you have to make those calls. You have to make those kind of risks in order for you to be able to stop them, because next to a Glitter Boy, Combat Cyborgs are like my biggest, toughest opponents to be able to take down. Honestly, I think Combat Cyborgs are tougher to take down than a lot of the power armors are. Yeah,
nothing like a mega damage bolt to the chest for 66. That was quite fun.
And then the Combat Cyborg gets off the ground and just gets a blast mark on his chest, and he keeps walking towards you, firing that freaking gun. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. That's what a lot of people who play the Combat Cyborg, at least in my experience, they're not used to having that level of combat experience and survivability. They're used to taking that 66 to the chest and I'm done, next character, because I'll see you guys in an hour, and they'll come back and do a new one. Whereas the Combat Cyborgs in a lot of the games, they're like, oh, I'm not going to survive that. And they end up surviving, and then they get stuck in like limbo mode of, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you just got to keep going. Just keep, charging that Glitter Boy. He'll knock you down 2 or 3 times, but you're one of the few people that can actually take it in the chest and keep going. If you're lucky. Great
DM tips is really what that boils down to. The next on the list is size. Here's another DM tip. These Combat Cyborgs are big. They're heavy. They get a bonus to their toughness from their size. But if you're going to play one of these things, or you're going to have one of these things in your party and stuff like that, throw some stuff at your characters. Like if he's walking across a rope bridge, there's a pretty good chance that bridge is going to snap. And I would love nothing more than to watch this thing tumble into the bottom of a ravine and just, you look down like the old Wile E. Coyote and just see the explosion. And then a few minutes later, he's climbing up the wall, with the, breaking the dust off him. But just F with them a little bit. They're big, they're tough. He gets in a car. Maybe roll a percentile or something like that to see if the tires blow off the thing as he gets in. And then he's got to pick it up or hold it up while you guys fix it. And, a little driving repair or, a repair or something along those lines. But it also says here they start with the upgradable edge. This isn't an edge that I'm familiar with.
And since I don't play a Combat Cyborg all the time, I'm not super familiar with it either. But if you give me a moment, we can take a look and find that.
Yeah, and we can edit this part out too as we look it up. Yeah,
sure. as we look that up. What's that called? Upgradable. I was just looking at that earlier this week at the new edges and stuff.
Upgradable.
What page?
Novice is in upgradable is on page 71. And this is an edge that allows a hero, or this hero can handle a lot more cybernetic invasion in his body than most. So I guess most people have less strain. You can increase your maximum strain by +6. So that must be what that is for then, right? That edge gives them the...
So a normal human being can take 6 strain as their maximum. But when you get rid of your body and you replace it with a cyborg body, well, guess what? You just burned all your strain, replacing your body with a cyborg one. But this edge, called upgradable, allows you to get that 6 strain back in order to add more cybernetic tools and abilities and weapons onto your frame. It's kind of like maximizing the space and miniaturizing the technology in order to be able to add more things on. You want a supercomputer brain. You want better hearing, better vision. You want that laser shooting, blaster rod in your forearm. You want that concealable holster for your laser pistol in your thigh. You want, grenades out of the back, or missiles out of your shoulders, whatever it can be. This edge gives you those extra 6 points back so you can add all those different cybernetics on. And that's pretty awesome. It makes your cyborg just a little bit tougher.
Yeah, the unarmed combat that comes right after this. Mike, who was playing in my campaign, was sitting back and he was shooting. And then at some point it just dawned on him that he was a melee tank and he needs to be in there and, kicking ass and taking names. Sure. So he pulled out his chainsaw sword.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Vroom. Yeah. Start that thing up. That's what I'm talking about. So melee damage in unarmed combat from a combat cyborg is mega damage. It is your strength plus D6 with just your hands.
And remember, the bionic augmentation, your strength starts at D12 plus 2.
Correct.
Plus a D6.
So you're going to roll a D12, you're going to roll a D6, and you're going to add 2 to the total of either one of those 2 dice.
And it's mega damage.
Correct. And God forbid the dice explode and you roll the maximum, and then you get to add that die on top of it. And for those of you who have been playing Savage Rifts for any bit of time, you will know that there is a rule in Savage Rifts, a settings rule that allows you to spend a Benny. It's called extra effort. Instead of using it to reroll, you can spend that Benny to get an extra D6 onto your damage right from the boot. And it's even better if you get like a mediocre roll and you're like, yeah, that's not good enough, I want to try harder. You can spend the bunny after the roll and still get the D6 for the extra effort. So if you've never done that before, look that rule up. That's one of the ones that Sean Patrick Fannin reminded me of, that I had slipped between the cracks of the 101 rules that I had learned as we were playing the game, and now I'm using it all the time.
Rift's stock setting rules has the ability to spend a Benny to reroll the damage too, right?
Correct.
So if you don't like your damage, you could spend a Benny. Or could I spend 2 bennies at the same time and re-roll my damage and toss on an extra D6?
So extra effort has a little rule in there that's a caveat. It's specific. Yeah, you can't go crazy. It is 11, but you don't get 11 dice every roll, regardless of what you want to do here. No, there is a caveat rule in there, and it states, if you use the extra effort rule to spend the Benny to get the extra D6 on the die roll, you cannot spend any more bennies that roll to get re-rolls.
Wow.
So once you spend it and you get the D6, you get the extra D6 and you get what you get and you roll what you roll. The majority of the time, the numbers and the math are on the player's side. You're going to roll probably better than average because you're rolling more dice, and you're out of 3 dice, you have a better chance of any one of those dice exploding. If you get just 1 6 and it starts to explode, you're already ahead of the game. You're already ahead of the math curve. So when you need that extra effort, and usually I tell people all the time, use that extra effort this is the round where we take them out. We've done enough damage. We're close. We're just got to tip them over the edge. And sometimes that's all it takes. And everybody decides to spend a Benny on extra effort. Every single attack roll that they do when they do damage, they're like, extra effort. I mean, it just comes out and bennies are flying like that last turn. They're just putting everything you possibly can into that last round to be able to knock them down. That's what you want to use extra effort for. But you can't re-roll after that. You just have to take what the dice give you. So, give and take. That's what the game's about.
Super cool. So those are all of the Combat Cyborg abilities and bonuses. But where there's a good side, there's usually a bad side. Combat Cyborg complications.
Cyborg complications. One of the funnest parts. This is where you're going to have a lot of fun with your character, being able to bring out all the inhumanness, all of the problems of being a cyborg. I mean, being 90% machine is cool. You hardly have to eat. You don't, just unscrew your arm, wash it off, and put it back on, and you're good to go.
I just coming from a Dungeons and Dragons background and rolling into Savage Worlds and seeing hindrances, it made my day. It was like finally heroes that actually had problems. You know, in D&D, everybody's the special snowflake. None of them has a scar in their face. They don't have, or you know what I mean? The one arm, one leg. They're not fat. They're not obese. There's, you know, everybody is this perfect champion. I feel like in Dungeons and Dragons. I don't want to, what's the word, like blanket statement everybody, because we know that's not really a true statement. But you know what I mean? Like Savage Worlds has a hindrance system.
Those of you who've never played Savage Worlds before, maybe you're just joining us trying to get your feet wet into the game. In Savage Worlds, the regular Savage Worlds rule set, you can take what's called hindrances. Hindrances are like the opposite of edges. If you're familiar with D&D, they would be the opposite of feats. Instead of being able to do something special, an extra magic missile, or maybe you're handsome, or maybe you have, you're the queen's daughter, or whatever that edge brings you. Hindrances are the exact opposite. Like Gary was saying, you could be overweight, you could be fat, you could be alcoholic, you could be a drug addict, you could have missing one leg, you can be clumsy, you can have an arch enemy, you could be loyal to an evil faction, maybe wanted. Your loyalty to a knighthood could be, go totally against what the party's trying to do. There's lots of hindrances from all the different settings that make up the Savage Worlds rainbow. There's hindrances and edges that are unique to every single world. And guess what? 99% of those you can bring into Savage Rifts just as written, and it probably really won't make much difference other than make your character that much more unique to yourself. And you're right, Gary. There's a lot of systems that do not do that.
Yeah.
But
so
a lot
cool.
of people don't realize too, hindrances are optional. You don't have to take hindrances. And everybody's asking, like, why would you bother taking a hindrance? It doesn't sound like it would benefit you at all. Ha ha ha. But that's where Savage Worlds kind of takes that to the next level. When you take a hindrance, you get the ability to be able to take an extra edge. And the more hindrances you take, the more points and edges that you can take. So if you take, for example, alcoholic as one of your hindrances, you can take the quick draw edge, and maybe it balances out the good with the bad. Now, you're thinking to yourself, well, that's all well and cool, but doesn't that mean I'm going to be addicted to always drinking all the time? Yes, but whenever you play your character towards, whenever you move your character towards that hindrance to cover that,
I know what you're trying to say, and let me fill in the blanks here. So
you're going to get a penny for it, right?
Yeah,
That's what
my ley line walker has it's called monologuer as one of his hindrances. So anytime I am dealt a jack, I have to make a smarts roll at -2, and if I fail, I spend the first round explaining to my opponent how I am going to kick his ass, and if I do that, and I take that penalty, which I think is really cool, then I get a penny for it that I can spend at a later date. Like playing your hindrances is how you can is one way of getting your bennies.
Sure, it's kind of like a cheat, right? That's everybody's always asking, like, how can I get more bennies? Play your character up, not necessarily create a joke and be the laughing stock of the game. Maybe that works the first time, but after that, play your hindrances. How are you going to come up with a cool combat tactic? How are you going to be able to avoid combat completely by following, I'm going to go get drunk at the bar while you guys figure this out. And he ends up saving the party. Okay, you're going to get a penny for that because that's part of the hindrance that you picked up. And you're right. That's a really cool little cue that you can use to role play the game off of. And when you do that, even if your GM doesn't pick up on it, I have the alcoholic hindrance. Does this count? Just take a second to say, hey, can I get a penny for that? Because it's, I'm playing into what my hindrances are. Because GMs are human. We miss a lot of stuff as we go. So just knock them on the head, throw a penny at them and say, hey, give me 2 back because I'm playing off my hindrances. That's a really great way to be able to bring role playing into the system. And I think it's one of the few genius things that Savage Worlds does.
Yeah, it's fantastic. All right, so Combat Cyborg complications. What have we got?
Okay, so let's start at the top. One of the biggest ones is all those moving parts. So it's pretty much telling you that you are no longer human and you need to be repaired. That means that instead of going to a doc or going to, a hospital or having them go, clean up them stitches, you have to go find a mechanic. You have to go find somebody who can weld, who can, re-glue, attach, duct tape, whatever you need to do to put that arm back on. That's what you're going to have to do. And everyone's thinking like, well, that doesn't sound so bad. But then you realize that the world's in an apocalypse. Yep. And you're like, how many mechanic shops are sitting around? You don't just walk into a bar and go, anybody know where there's a mechanic? I need this put back on. And you're holding up your leg or something like that.
A great opportunity for a DM to maybe blast off the foot, reduce the cyborg's pace, and have him side quest. You need to go find, some replacement part for your foot.
Exactly. You're missing a foot. So from now on, your pace is going to be half of what it normally is. And you're going to have a -2 penalty to all trait rolls that have to do with your movement or your jumping or whatever. And next thing you know, the whole party's come up with a wheelbarrow act, and they have half the cyborg sitting in the wheelbarrow or, being pushed around in a motorized go-kart or something just to be able to get across the field while he happens to be firing his railgun. I mean, that's the kind of stuff, the kind of crazy apocalyptic stuff that you can only do in Rifts. And I love that for him.
I'm imagining, you ever see the videos, the cute videos with the little dogs, and they have somebody makes like a little wheelchair for him and straps it on the back. That's what I'm picturing. Yeah. Your Combat Cyborg guy's kind of wheelchairing himself across the field because he's missing an ankle. Exactly. That's awesome.
That is awesome. It's one of the few things. See, this is how you can play up complications. Yep. This is how you can play up hindrances in your game. You just got to be a little creative about it and just throw it out there.
And throwing a wrench. Throwing a wrench in the gear, or in the gears here of this deal, a lot of people, when they think healing the flesh. So your healer is usually going to be like for healing, healing the humans and stuff like that, mending those kinds of wounds. He's useless on this cyborg unless he has that repair skill. That makes other healers, like repairing healers or mechanics, viable as well. It's it makes it something that you want to have if you're going to be playing these kind of characters.
Next in my Nations of Doom campaign, the monthly game that we play here with all of my gang, one of the guys on there is a Mars character, and he plays a combat medic, and he's a pacifist. So he refuses to fight anybody, but as soon as someone gets hurt, all of a sudden everybody's calling out medic, and he's going running. But as soon as the Combat Cyborg got hurt, he got there, and he's like, I don't grease, oil, stuff, wires sticking out. I don't know what to do with them. I know people. I don't know machines. And that's when everybody went, oh crap, what are we going to do now? And they realized that he's not just going to go to sleep and rest and his wiring is going to grow back together in the next 8 hours. We need to find him a mechanic. So that was a whole nother side quest right then and there, because he was really hurt and really damaged out of that.
Yep, one of my side quests is to fix my spatula arm. I need fingers, right? There's so many things that you can do. Well, we did shoot off and look for these.
There's a whole new meaning to needing a hand job, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I can spatulate myself, I guess. I don't know. I'm spatulating. One of the things that we did was we went and looked for these hoverbike guys. We found their trail. You could see the grass that was kind of split off to the side. We followed it, and we found these guys. They were burnt up or sucked dry. I don't remember if some swarm got them or something like that. But it was kind of funny because I've got spatula hand, and I used it for a shovel to dig these guys shallow graves. So I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm making some use out of my spatula hand.
Yeah, please tell me your GM gave you a Benny for that, because that's awesome. Yeah. That's a hell of a way to use the hindrance to be able to make I would have given you a Benny for that.
CJ, if you're listening, suck it. Jerk.
I think, talking about that just for a few seconds more. All you GMs out there that are playing games, that are playing Savage Rifts, don't be afraid to hand out bennies. I hand these things out like chocolate chip cookies. I kid you not. There are times where my guys are going through probably 15 or 20 bennies a game, between 5 people. That means this is on top of the 3 that they start with. So, they're burning through these things every single combat round, coming up with different ideas. A lot of the guys that I play with are great. They're longtime veteran gamers. They've got some years under their belt. So it helps a little because they're able to role play a little bit better. But they play off those hindrances and they use them. And you know what? If you're not burning through bennies like that, you're doing something wrong in Savage Rifts. But that's just my game. That doesn't mean that that's how you have to play it. But if experience has taught me anything, the more bennies you throw at Savage Rifts, the more fun that you're going to have at it.
You're going to get people doing those extreme moves because they're not worried about failing or something like along those lines. And
then you have them right where you want them, because at the end of like turn 4, turn 5, they've burned up all those 6 bennies they've been sitting on the whole game, and they're still going at it. They're like, I'm out of bennies. What do I do? And that's when they start coming up with ideas. Okay, how can I get another benny? I have a hindrance here. I'm an alcoholic. Okay, I hold the gun with my left hand and shoot a burst at him. With my right hand, I take a swig of what I have left. Okay, you're going to take a -2 multi-action penalty for that. I don't care. I need a drink. And okay, there's your penny right as soon as he's done. Right? Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that you do. That's how you go and make a game memorable.
Need a drink and a benny.
There you go.
Gray matter. Combat Cyborgs only start with 2 points instead of the normal 5 for attributes. And they can't, or these may only be spent on smarts and spirits. That's a bit of a stickler on that one there.
Well, fame has its price. And in this case, without a body, you don't really have much left. A lot of your mental capacity and a lot of your ability to be able to, will yourself to get up in the morning, so to speak, it's all gone to the machine now. You don't have that heart. You don't have that same energy, that same feeling, the same nervous system. So it's really a big drain on you. And that's what it comes down to. You give up all of that gray matter in order to make up those mechanical muscles, those, the big joints and the powerful legs and the armor and everything that goes with it.
Yeah, I love the hindrances and stuff. It adds such flavor to Savage Worlds all the time. And like we were talking about before, here's heavy is the next one on the list. They're extra heavy. It makes them difficult to operate power armor, robot armor, different vehicles, things like that. Doubling purchase. What does this say? Power armor must be reinforced, doubling purchase and repair costs.
Yeah, so you can get a cyborg to fit into a glitter boy armor. But the glitter boy armor is going to cost you twice as much that it normally would, because you're trying to fit an 8-foot, 700, 600 pound machine into a bigger 10-foot, 900 pound machine, and the human proportions don't fit. So you kind of got to throw out some padding, remove some of the reinforcements, some of the harnesses. You don't need that. You're a cyborg. Just leave the cable to plug his brain in and you're good to go. But it's going to cost you money. Is
there wet wipes or toilet paper in Rifts? Because I'm pretty sure
you got to worry about is oil slicks from a cyborg.
I'm pretty sure if I saw a glitter boy or power armor coming at me, and I'm thinking to myself, once I annihilate this thing and get the squishy guy outside, and out pops this combat cyborg instead of the squishy little pink thing that I think is going to be in there, I'd be like, oh, you got to be kidding me! Really?
17 shots with the railgun, 4 missiles later, and then the combat cyborg comes out fresh and ready to go.
That's crazy. We got a few more to get through here. What's next on the list?
So we're talking about inhuman appearance. So Borgs are Borgs. They look like walking machines. Now, Borgs tend to be, there's a lot of them throughout the North America and throughout the world, because the transformation into a cyborg has become, I wouldn't say commonplace, but it's become common enough that a lot of people see a cyborg and they know that is a human being in there. So they tend to usually react normally to them, but because you have that inhuman appearance, it still makes people uncomfortable. So that you suffer some penalties to your charisma whenever you're dealing with just about anything that's intelligent. You can't just walk into a bar and say, give me a beer, because they're going to laugh at you, because cyborgs don't drink. And that's what makes it a little bit more difficult for you to be able to, talk to the bartender and got any pretty women around here? No, that ain't going to cut it. That kind of stuff is not going to happen when you're a combat cyborg leaning up against the bar and the bar goes, here, because the 900 pounds, the pressure that you're putting down on the end of it. So it makes it a little difficult for you to be able to talk to people.
He goes in, sits down at the bar, snaps the bar stool, gets back up, looks at the bartender. Exactly. He's like, I really need a drink. And then realizes that he's mostly machine. Maybe that's a hindrance, right?
That would be awesome. That would be awesome if someone put in as a hindrance and he doesn't realize that he's a machine, or he forgets it all the time. Silly one-liners like that. I'd be popping bennies left and right just to hear what the one-liners that guy has put together.
Yeah,
but we're talking about cyborgs a little more though, leaning up against the bar and watching it lean over, and then pushing on the bar stool or sitting on a bar stool and watching it collapse on you. One of the things that a lot of cyborgs have to worry about is the loss of dexterity. They don't have that fine manual control that they used to do, so they get a big penalty to their any kind of actions that have to do with agilities or rolls or any skills that are not related. That are related to their agility. So if you need to go do a long jump, you're gonna get a penalty to that. If you want to jump off the car and onto the horse, hopefully the horse is a robotic one, because you'll kill it. But that's an agility roll. You have to do a dodge from a missile blast. Guess what? You have an agility roll. But your frame, your armor, and all your cybernetics, they're designed to take damage. And a lot of the times, my guys that play combat cyborgs, they're kind of afraid to make that agility roll, because they're like, oh, -2 penalty, that's huge. And yes, you may not have a really big agility because you're a combat cyborg, who cares? You've got like an armor rating of like 20. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Nothing is going to be able to do a lot of damage to you. You can take a lot of punishment. So it takes some getting used to, but just like everything else, there's always a complication with it.
You mentioned hopping on the back of a horse, and I'm just thinking back to the hindrance that we just created. Basically, you forget that you're a cyborg, you jump on a horse, and you remember as soon as its back snaps and it's paralyzed on the ground, you're like, oh.
Yeah. When you weigh more than the horse, that should be a clue.
Yeah. So the loss of dexterity, you might be thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't make any sense. You're a machine. Surely they must have figured this out. But isn't for any machine, especially in our current day and age, I'm sure they would have fixed it in the future and stuff like that. But basically dexterity is a robot's nightmare. Strength and stuff like that. Sure, we got all sorts of machines that can pick things up and toss stuff around, but doing the dexterous stuff has always been the hard stuff. So that loss of dexterity kind of makes sense in a bit. The next one it says is malfunctions.
Oh, malfunctions are awesome. So in Savage Rifts, there's a rule that's called technical difficulties. It's a setting rule. Whenever you roll snake eyes, so you're usually rolling 2 dice in Savage Worlds for every action that you do. Whenever you roll 2 ones, there could be potential problems with the tech, the items, the robots, or whatever. Excuse me, not the robots, but the machines that you're using. So a good example is, say you're pulling out the laser rod that's in your forearm to fire the laser at the enemy, and it takes a certain technological skill, or maybe you're trying to repair it. Well, while you were trying to repair it, you rolled 2 ones. Oh crap. Now in Savage Rifts, you cannot spend a penny to re-roll a technical failure, or what's called a critical fail. A critical failure. Every time you roll 2 ones, you have to live with the consequences. So this is where the GMs get ear-to-ear smiles, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to so get you for this." This is for that other time when you use the extra effort. You're repairing your arm and you're putting the weapon back in it, and the weapon breaks and it goes off in your arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. See the dead silence. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, he's going to blow his arm off." But it happens because of the settings rules. It allows you to be able to create those little unique moments like that. So word to the wise, if you roll 2 ones, hope and pray that you've been nice to the GM.
Yeah. I like this next one, Shadow of Themselves. So you don't actually choose a race, but it says you may increase an attributed die type or take an edge to reflect your original race. Now, my question would be, could you pick a DB race and go through some of the DB races and become... That's completely legit?
Sure. So say you're playing a fantasy elf, right? A typical D&D elf from Forgotten Realms, and he goes through a rift and he ends up in Savage Rifts. And 3 minutes out into this world, he gets just decimated and destroyed. Someone picks up what's left of him, his ragged body. He survives by some miracle. He gets turned into a combat cyborg. Can't use magic anymore. Doesn't have to worry about any of his racial profiles or benefits or hindrances or otherwise. So you get to use the combat cyborg as the base as it is now. And, he used to be an elf. Maybe he kept his ears, or maybe one ear. That might be his only reminder. But because you were, your race doesn't really matter anymore. Now you're just like the machines, like everyone else. So you get to increase 1 attribute by 1 die type, or you get to take a free edge. It's all up to you.
That's kind of cool, because some of the DBs have some pretty neat stuff. You might be able to scroll through it, find something cool that you might think may personalize your Borg and strap that on, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it allows you to still have that one little uniqueness of the DB race that you came from that you just managed to keep with you. It could be elven magic, it could be how to make dwarven beer, whatever suits you. There's 101 DBs in Savage Rifts too. So
spiritually numb, you can't take arcane background.
Yeah,
now,
so those of you who have been thinking about this, you cannot play a leyline walker cyborg. It will not work. This rule right here says you cannot. Everybody and their grandma's been telling me, I want to play a leyline walker that gets transformed into a combat cyborg with a glitter boy armor.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with Savage Worlds, arcane background is basically the form or a form of magic that you strap onto your character. So if you wanted to be a priest, you would play arcane background miracles. If you wanted to be a magic caster, you would play arcane background. What is it? It is just magic, is it not? It's just magic.
That's correct. That's
and
correct.
in Rifts, you also have arcane background psion assist, so you can pick up psionics. So you can't take any form of arcane background. There's no magic. This guy is purely a tank.
Yeah, contrary to popular belief, you cannot have a lightning bolt magic missile throwing cyborg. It does not happen in Rifts. And I don't believe it even happens in the original Rifts either. You kind of give up your ability to have that ability when you give up your humanity, when you give up your physical form in order to take on the life of a machine. And speaking of life of a machine, the last one, you're a total conversion. So it says specifically, being a combat cyborg uses all of a character's personal strain ever. So you only start with the 6 strain from the upgradable edge. But remember, if you don't take that upgradable edge, you will have to wait till your next advancement before you can add on any additional cybernetics. So you literally would just be the armor and the robot. There will be no special packages, no optic vision, no combat computer, no laser rod in the forearm, vibro claws, nothing like that. That's get transformed completely.
That's crazy. So the upgradable edge basically gives you like 6 sort of benefits to your class, but then there's you can take it again and add more stuff on?
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it also gets really expensive. And just because you upgrade your frame, you take the upgrade edge, it doesn't mean that there are not penalties for taking on all of that extra cyberware. Every time that you take the upgradable edge and you use any of those points, you're going to be adding cybernetics to your body. So when you add cybernetics, you take on points of strain. Points of strain become penalties to your everything that you roll. So you have to be careful. You can't take too much cyberware. Even if you take 6 points of strain, for every 2 points of strain you take, I believe it's a -1 to all of your rolls. So you can only take on so much before it starts really hindering you, and you're making like straight die rolls instead of D12 plus 12 plus 6 plus D6. It's going to be like a D12 plus 6 -1. Because you've taken on so much strain, so much penalty from all the different pieces of equipment that you've strapped onto your body.
So I haven't looked up the rule on it, but we'll talk about it here in a quick second because we're just going to get ready to wrap this up. My Leyline Wizard has gills as a cybernetic enhancement. It's one of the things that I picked up from the Heroes package. The DM kept saying, I'll let you trade that out. You're going to get strain, and I'm like, I don't care. This is what I got. It might come in handy at some point. And there was a point where I asked him, I'm like, is there any water around? Because I'm going to try and jump out of the way of some stuff. But strain, you just said that it applies to all of the rolls, and CJ's telling me that I only have to roll strain when I roll my spell casting. Is that not correct? Strain applies to every roll?
So I'm taking a look at strain on page 64 under traits in the Tommorow Legion Players Guide. And it specifically states a character's maximum strain is equal to the lower of her spirit or vigor die type. So that'll give you how much strain you can take. And then if a character takes more cyberware than her maximum strain, she suffers a permanent level of fatigue. So let me rewind that and make a correction. If you have a strain of 6, whenever you get your 7th point of strain, you will suffer a permanent level of fatigue. Whenever you take 1 fatigue, it's a -1. When you take 2 points or your 8th point of strain, it will leave you in a permanent state of exhaustion, which means you take -2 to all of your penalties or to all of your rolls. So as long as you stay under your maximum strain, which is equal to the lower of your spirit or vigor die, you will be okay. It's when you go 1 point over your strain. So for example, a Leyline Walker has a vigor of D4. He's not the toughest. He's a skinny, scrawny little wizard. So his strain would therefore be a 4. You can take on 4 points of strain or 4 points worth of strain of cybernetics. An arm, I think, might be 3. Correct me if I'm wrong. So as long as you stay 4 or less, you're going to be okay.
And there's charts in the book, right, that will show you how much each item gives strain.
That is correct. Each cybernetic item has a cost, and I just don't have it readily handily right in
Yeah.
front of me. But each item has a cost in strain. Say you want a combat computer. Well, that won't be so difficult. So that might cost you 1. So, you can do multiple small systems or replace an entire limb and still have enough humanity left to not impact your abilities, your rolls, your dexterity, your your touch, your magic, your psionics, that kind of stuff. But the moment you take 1 point more than your current strain, in the example of a leyline wizard, when you take your 5th point, now you take a permanent level of fatigue. That means you cannot get rid of it. You cannot heal that fatigue. The only way you can get rid of it is to take off the cyberware. And while that has its own dangers, and that's a whole nother side quest in and of itself. But that means that anytime you take a level of fatigue, you will take a penalty of -1 to every roll that you make on everything that you do, not just your spell casting.
Wow. That's crazy.
So it's not always great to have cyberware. There are penalties for being able to take on a machine instead of a human body.
Yep.
I've known many. I used to have a leyline walker, and I still play him to this day. I still have him, and he has no legs. He took the maimed hindrance, I think, and he actually bought or had a tech wizard make a backpack / belt that was anti-gravity. It give him the fly spell, but allows him to float at human height level as if he had legs. He has no legs. He just wears like a long skirtish jacket, and there's nothing under there. People think he's walking. It looks like he's walking, but he's just floating along everywhere that he goes. And he was born that way. And I made him that way when he started out. So it kind of sucks when the backpack gets broken or I run out of batteries. But, that's what Magic's for.
So, yeah, to finish off and basically put a pin in the Combat Cyborg, they get a little bit of starting gear. And you can look this up inside the book. You get this NG56 light ion pistol. So you got some ranged. You've got your mini railgun. And you've got this...
I like the railgun. That's one of my favorites. You also get the biggest, most gnarliest chain greatsword you have ever seen. So just imagine Conan's big bladed sword, but that's the size of a chainsaw blade on the end of it. That's freaking awesome. I love that.
And that kind of is the gist of the chain greatsword, is it not? It is just a gigantic sword that's like a chainsaw.
It's a big old beat stick with some gnarly teeth on it. That's all it really is. That's what it's there for.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And then a little bit of money, and you're good to go. And that is the Combat Cyborg, start to finish. Very cool. He is not quite as it says. One of the little side effects is he's not as tough, or he doesn't do as much damage as a glitter boy. But what he makes or what he lacks, he makes up in basically his mobility. The glitter boy. One of the things with them is they got to lock themselves in. You spend a turn, lock yourself in. Hopefully your party's not around you when you shoot your big gun. Not with the Combat Cyborg. You can run in, blast. You got some range. You got mobility. You've got just a whole ton of cool things. All your implants and stuff. That is just friggin' wicked. It makes me want to go play one of these ones. But before we wrap this up, there's a few things that I would like to go over because they're just questions that I have to ask. Like anything inside of Savage Worlds, you get your 5 points to spend on your attributes and your 15 points to spend on your skill points. It says, unless your iconic framework says differently. Now, what is iconic framework?
So an iconic framework is exactly what we were just talking about. An example of an iconic framework is a Combat Cyborg or a Leyline Wizard or a Crazy. An iconic framework is a character class in Savage Rifts. And the example that you just gave is a great example of the exception to the rule. Like you said, Savage World characters get 5 attribute points, but a Combat Cyborg doesn't get 5 attribute points. He gets 2, and he gets to spend them on his spirit or on his smarts. Either 2 on all of, 2 points on one attribute or 1 on each, however he would like. That iconic framework changes the standard character point choices that you have whenever you start to create your character. So again, Combat Cyborgs get 2 instead of 5 to put points towards their attributes when creating their character.
One of the other things that it mentions here is that some of the iconic frameworks below provide arcane backgrounds. They're obviously like the Leyline Wizard would have magic. He is sort of the magic caster of the deal. ISP, which is inner strength points, or PPE, potential psychic energy. The potential psychic energy is for psionics. That's their spell point pool for psionics. And
potential psychic energy is for magic. ISP is for psionics, but they're interchangeable. In Savage Worlds, there's power points. And PPE and ISP are just like power points, only ISP tend to be used just on psionic powers, and PPE get used just for magic. But those are some of the vocabulary that came over from the Palladium Rifts games. They're technically just all the same power points. They're interchangeable.
Okay. Now, when we were creating our characters in at session 0, one of the things that the DM brought up was that you can take any edge, like during character creation, edges and hindrances aren't restricted to your rank. Is that a true statement?
That is a true statement. That's right there in the rulebook. You can take an edge even if you don't qualify for it. So let me explain that a little more. Edges have requirements. You have to have a certain minimum attribute, skill, or previous edge before you can take the edge that you're looking for. Or maybe you have to be a certain race or a certain class before you can select that edge. The really cool thing about Savage Rifts is when you start to make your character, those requirements go out the window. If you want to take an edge that has 3 different edges as a requirement, or has a really high skill set or ability, or even just a race that you normally wouldn't be able to take, well, it's Rifts. Who cares about that stuff? If you want to take, hold the line, acrobat, and arcane background, and you don't have any of the, attributes that are higher enough, or you don't have any of the skills or abilities, it doesn't matter. You can throw those right out the window and you can start that character with those edges. But you can only do that at character creation. Once you gain advancements or gain levels and you're able to pick more edges, then you have to make sure that you have those requirements before you can pick others.
And I can't think of it off the top of my head, so you'll have to forgive me. But I know that if you take like an advanced edge right out of the gate, in order for you to take a different after character creation, if you wanted to take a different edge, you need to meet all the requirements of that edge. So if let's say you have advanced punch in the face as an edge, but the next skill that you want to take requires that you just have punch in the face, and you've got advanced punch in the face. You don't have punch in the face, so you can't take that other edge without taking punch in the face. Hopefully that makes sense to the people that are listening. Do you know what I mean?
If there's edges that have tiers, so the first edge is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. It's basic, medium, and advanced. And you take the medium edge from character start. If the advanced edge means that you have to have the basic and the medium edge in order to get the advanced one, well, guess what? You're going to spend your advancement to get the basic one. And then once you've met that requirement, if you have another edge or advancement, you can pick the advanced one. But if you don't, you'll have to wait till your next level up before you can take the advanced one. Did that make sense? Or did I just confuse the hell out of you?
You probably made a lot more sense than my stupid punch in the face idea. And my whole punch in the face example just gives you an idea as to how atrocious this show would be if it was just me running it.
It's part of the complex, the complex issues of character creation and, systemic math that we nerds and we geeks put together every single time we get together just to be able to play the game. It's funny because you don't realize how advanced of a concept that is until you start playing with people who have no idea about role-playing games, and they're sitting around going, what are you guys talking about? They got that deer in the headlights look of, man, I went down the rabbit hole with these ones. But that's the kind of stuff that you have to expect, especially when you're playing Rifts. It's cranked up to 11 for a reason, so you get out your calculators and sharpen up them pencils, because I tell you what, it happens every single game. Somebody comes up with a weird combination going, can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? And now what do I do with it?
Yes, it can be daunting, but just take the time, read what it has to say, and sort of follow along, follow the dots. The last thing that I want to touch on is this hero's journey. Just a brief discussion of what it is. Yeah. I'm going to let you explain it so I don't this and that everybody to death with my stupid punch in the face examples.
No, I mean, it was a great example. But anyways, heroes' journeys. So, as a general rule, most of the occupational character classes, or forgive me, most of the iconic frameworks in Savage Rifts get a couple of roles on these tables in Chapter 6 that are called the hero's journey. What they are they're kind of like, well, one of them is called narrative hooks. And what it allows you to do, it allows you to bring up special abilities, special benefits, weaponry, cybernetics, magical items, education, experience, lots of different things that your character would start out with that most characters normally would not. To make a comparison to what that would be like playing a D&D character that starts with a table that you roll on for magic items at level 1. So, you roll a d20 or percentage or whatever it is, and 53, and you start out with the Dragon Slayer sword, and that just happens to be a magic item that your ley line walker would have.
Yeah, I
and
believe
that's what
I got.
tables allow you to do. I mean, a good example is, we can talk a little bit about one of them, such as the very first table in the hero's journey is called a narrative hook, and most of the classes are going to be able to roll a narrative hook. This just helps you kind of hook your character into the game and give you a little bit of idea. Number 7 on the table is called Blood is Thicker, and it talks about having family. So whenever you're in this world, you're not just a lone single child, orphan or whatever. You have parents, you have brothers and sisters, uncles, nephews, cousins that are, maybe big, maybe small, you never know. And they become a part of your narrative hook. So you have to come up with a way to be able to integrate those names into the game. Maybe you have a younger sister that you've always taken care of, you always send money to. Maybe you have a brother who's a member of the Coalition States Forces. You've been estranged from him ever since he decided to go join. I mean, there's lots of different options, but those character hooks, there's at least 20 of them or so in the first table for the hero's journeys, and it really creates a lot of background for the characters to be able to play in the world, especially if you don't know what Rifts is about, you don't know a lot of the fluff or the history, or maybe you're just a brand new character that's never had the opportunity to read the books, or you're just a new guy learning how to game, and this is the first game you chose. Good luck. The hero's journeys and those narrative hooks are exactly that. Gives you a hook to be able to play the game, and I absolutely love it. But that's just one of them. I mean, there's plenty of others. Experience and wisdom is a common one that's given to a lot of the Mars characters, and say we pick the same number 7, you get a strange tingling on the back of your neck when things go all crazy. Your character starts with the danger sense edge. It's just one of those random pieces of experience that you've gained along the way, and maybe you're a Mars mercenary that happens to have been through 3 or 4 different major wars or been fighting for 3 or 4 years, and you're the first one to sense grenade or incoming fire, or you just happen to know something's not right here because the hairs stand up on the back of your neck. That's that intuition kicking in on there. A lot of the mages and a lot of the psionics get to choose also heroes journeys roles on the magic and mysticism table and the psionics table.
Yeah, each of the iconic frameworks has a little section that says Hero's Journey to give your little creation, your Combat Cyborg, it's going to set him apart. It's fluff, little things that you can add to him. So for the Combat Cyborg, it says that he gets 2 roles on any of the following tables. You can choose cybernetics, close combat weapons, ranged weapons, and training. But then you get a 3rd role on any table except those dealing with magic, psionics, or body armor. So they're going to
customize those roles to every single iconic character class that they're going to be iconic framework that they put in there, simply because, it doesn't make sense for a Combat Cyborg to have a magic sword. But you know what? If you want to have a magic sword and you can't use it, but maybe it was a family heirloom, maybe you were an ex-knight from another land that came through the rifts, and that's your family heirloom and you got to keep it with you, work it into the story. Don't be afraid to go against what the rules say. This is just as a base for you to be able to go after. Every single iconic framework is going to have different limitations and different numbers of roles that they're going to be able to use to go off the hero's journey tables. But don't be afraid to break those rules and say, no, GM, I'm thinking this in a different way. A lot of us take that knowledge and experience that we have as veteran gamers, and we take that for granted because we do that all the time, almost naturally now because of our experience. And I have found with a lot of younger gamers, I have teenagers in the house that I've been playing games with for at least half a dozen years, and they still struggle with that sometimes. So kind of think of that. If you're a GM that's been around for a minute and you're helping, you're in your very first session zero game and you're going over it, and maybe you're playing with inexperienced players or maybe people who aren't familiar with role-playing games just in general, don't be afraid to break those. Don't be afraid to change those. That's a big word of advice just for all the GMs and all the players out there. Just because the system says it needs to be done this way doesn't mean you can't break it. It's theoretical. Just come up with whatever reason you want and make it work. You'd be surprised at how much more colorful it makes the game and how much more fun it makes the game when you do that and you make the game your own.
Yeah, the hero's journey is just a little bit of fluff that you can add on to each one of your deals, each one of your iconic frameworks. I liked what I got. I think I got Flaming Sword on my guy, which is awesome. I got the cybernetic gills, which is kind of useless, but like I said, I was trying to play it up. CJ really wanted me to change it up, and I'm like, no, I'm going to take the strain. I'm going to have it affect my rolls. I want it to be somewhat difficult. And when something happened, I don't know if it was this big power armor or something like that. I don't know what he was doing, but I said to CJ, is there any water nearby? Because I was thinking to myself, I'm going to use these cybernetic gills. I'm going to hop in the water. I'm going to breathe underwater and try and avoid whatever massive damage is going to come my way. Unfortunately, I got KO'd and lost a limb, and now I have spatula arm. But yeah, it's cool, and every iconic framework has a different deal. And I think, what did I get? I got the sword. I got the gills. Oh, and I got a Techno Wizard's pistol that reduces vigor. It shoots cold bolts or something like that. And awesome. And I'm like, well, that's really cool. So it just right out of the gate, my character is sort of unique in that sense that's what he got. So.
Sure, you're going to come across characters that roll similar things that you do. You'll find another Techno Wizard or another Psionicist or someone from a magic ability that's going to have a cold shooting pistol just like yours, but it's going to be unique in all the different tables and all the different hooks that you roll. It's going to make their character unique. It doesn't have to look the same. It doesn't even have to be the same identical type of gun, but you'll have something in common that you'll be able to talk with the other character about or interchange with or have a shootout with. It's just that kind of fun kind of details is what makes the game go.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to put a pin in this episode. It is now, what are we, 145, almost 2 hours into that, and we just got through the Combat Cyborg, which is super cool.
I told you it's going to be. We almost need to take every single class and make it one episode because there's so many things you can talk about. After a while, you'll start to see a lot of repetition because a lot of the same edges, a lot of the same rules will come into effect, but they'll impact them in different ways. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll try to do the best we can to not talk so much.
Yes. Try and shorten things up a little bit, keep it more punctual, maybe more to the point. Speaking of which, let's take it into the fray.
Whoa, bloody hell. Oh man, I love this guy. Do we have to go yet? Yes. Oh, please. Of course we do. We've got work to do. Please can we stay just a little bit longer? Stop it, Jeffrey. Right, come on back through the rift there. Fine. Anyhow.
Looks like we got a rift opening in front of us, Victor.
Run for the hills.
No. I wonder where this one's going to lead us. We'll let you know next time. We will have another action-packed show, and we will be tackling more on the character section of the Player's Guide. Most likely, we're going to zoom in on the crazy. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit more time to get into some more amazing material for this universal setting. And in the meantime, I would just like to put a shout out there, throw it out to ZOVYA. She's become a good friend of mine. She called me a douche, and I just wanted to let her know that there was no hard feelings. She was a little drunk and was having a bit of fun with me. But
I like her already.
Yeah, right. I think everybody likes her already because of that. She does these amazing maps. You can't beat these maps. I was on my Patreon tonight checking some of the things out. I've been really busy with work the last couple of weeks, and she's laid out 3 different maps. One of them actually has a portal in it. That would come in handy. I know she's working right now on a beach scene. There's taverns and all sorts of stuff. But if you haven't seen ZOVYA's maps, check them out. Check her out at Patreon. She does some of the most incredible artwork for a VTT map that you can get your hands on. Hands down, she is probably the best VTT mapper out there right now. ZOVYA's maps. I'll put a link in the description. Anything you want to add, Victor, or bring it, mention, throw it out there, etc. before we take off?
Yeah, you know what, everybody? I'm looking at the ZOVYA's Patreon page right now. That artwork is outstanding. I have a lot of friends that do a lot of similar work like this, so please support those Patreons. They're the ones that keep us going. They're the ones that give us all the tools to be able to have the great games that we do. And ZOVYA, if you're listening, make some Rifts maps, and I'll be your next patron. So shout out to everybody who's putting those together. Frank Turfler does a great job as usual. There's a lot of people in the community, in the Savage Rifts Google Plus community. Please come on out, sign up. I'll make sure I approve it the same day. Usually I get approvals almost every single hour lately. It's been really blowing up. So please join us, and thank you so much for all the great creators that are out there, all the great artists that give us the tools and the ability to be able to play the games that we love. Awesome work that you guys do. I don't think we give you guys enough credit, and someday maybe we'll do a show for you guys.
Yes, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire with that Tabletop Simulator GM game there, buddy.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I think that's one of the things that we need to try to do next, Gary, is try to put together a game. Let's get through some of the Tommorow Legion handbook, and then we'll plan on doing some of that for the community. Maybe we'll record it and do it live or something, get a few people from the community. I think it would be awesome.
All right, hold my hand, Victor, as we jump through this rift and see where it takes us.
I am not touching that spatula.
All right, thanks everybody. We're out.
Have a great night. Game on.